My name is Eva Marin, I'm 37, and that Saturday morning I discovered my parents had hidden drugs in my car. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. The SUV smelled like black coffee and sunscreen. Sunlight hit the windshield at a sharp angle, scattering across the crumbs of yesterday's muffins on the console. My stainless travel mug rattled in its holder every time I changed lanes. It was supposed to be simple: leave Chicago at 6:15, drive down I-65, reach Jacksonville by late evening, surprise my aunt for her 70th birthday. Snacks bagged, water bottles lined, tablets charged for the kids, ages 6, 9, and 12, 3 bodies with 3 different playlists. At mile marker 213, just after the rest area, my husband spoke. Not loud. Not panicked. Just flat, with that weight that makes your hands cold. Eva. Pull off. Now. I glanced over. His knuckles were white on the armrest. The color had drained out of him. What? Why? Just exit. Please. It wasn't the word, it was the please. He saves it for fire alarms, for ER visits. I swerved right, tires spitting gravel as we veered into a gas station that looked abandoned, 2 rusted pumps, canopy lights busted, a soda can rolling lazy across the concrete. The cicadas outside buzzed like bad wiring. The kids barely noticed. They were arguing over who touched whose headphone cord. He didn't move for a full beat. Then unbuckled, climbed out, and said through my window, "Pop the trunk." What's going on? Just open it. Something in his tone, flat, almost too steady, pinned me down harder than yelling ever could. I hit the latch. He walked back, out of sight. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. 30 seconds stretched like wire about to snap. Then, slam. He was at my door again, jaw set. Come here. You need to see it. I stepped out, shoes crunching on broken glass by the pump. He opened the hatch. There, wedged between our duffels, sat the battered navy suitcase my parents had insisted we take because there wasn't room in their car. They'd pressed it into my hands that morning, all smiles, saying it was just gifts. He unzipped it halfway, folded back a layer of clothes. Packets. Thick, plastic sealed. Stacked tight in a child's backpack with cartoon rockets. Not vitamins. Not gifts. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like leaving Earth. I didn't know yet that in 72 hours, I'd cut my parents out of my life completely. The gas station office smelled like old grease and cardboard, even though the door was locked and the windows were plastered with faded lotto posters. I stood just outside the SUV, air thick with heat already climbing to 87 degrees before noon, the blacktop shimmering like oil. My husband zipped the suitcase closed again and shoved it back into the corner of the trunk. He didn't slam it, he placed it down almost gently, like it was a live wire. Don't touch it, he said. His voice was steady, but the muscle in his jaw twitched. Inside the car, the kids had turned up the volume on their show. Cartoon voices leaked through the cracked window, clashing against the silence between us. I crossed my arms. We're driving across 3 states with, I couldn't even say it out loud, the word catching in my throat. This. In the car. With them. He nodded once, not looking at me. That's why we're not driving anymore. Not like this. I pressed my palms against my temples, the sweat from my skin leaving damp prints. It was supposed to be a birthday trip. Just one weekend. Not anymore. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the kids couldn't hear. If state police had stopped us, Eva, it's felony. With minors in the vehicle? Do you realize what that means? I realized. I realized too clearly. My chest squeezed so tight I thought I might faint right there on the cracked concrete. I thought about my parents, standing in their driveway that morning, waving casually as they loaded us down. It's just some gifts, my mom had said, pressing the suitcase handle into my palm. Toys, wine, little things for your aunt. My dad had winked. You've got the bigger car anyway. Bigger car. Bigger trap. I leaned against the side of the SUV, the heat of the metal burning through my shirt. My breath came short. I won't do this anymore, I whispered. What? My husband asked. I swallowed. My mouth was dry, tongue like paper. Be their cover. Be the responsible one who makes it all look fine. I can't. Not after this. He studied me, eyes narrowing slightly. Good. The word landed solid, like a brick in place. No pity, no panic, just agreement. Behind us, the digital numbers on the dusty gas pump flickered faintly, 000000. No fuel, no sale, no future in this place. I pulled my phone from my pocket. 5 missed calls. Both parents, alternating. I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at him. We need a plan. He nodded once. First step, get rid of their bag. Safely. The words lodged in my throat, half relief, half terror. Because once we did that, there was no going back. When I was little, my parents called me the organized one. At 7, I was the kid who made lists before school trips, while my sister borrowed cash she never repaid. At 12, I was the one answering the phone when collectors called, scribbling down numbers and pretending to be an adult. They built their lives on shine. A leased Lexus, dinners charged to cards, holidays booked before last year's balance was even cleared. What mattered wasn't solvency, it was the appearance of ease. If the neighbors thought we were doing well, then we were. That was their math. I learned early that my job was to patch the leaks. To translate forms, smooth over bills, lend just enough to stop the lights from shutting off. And each time I did, they praised me as so dependable. Dependable became my leash. My sister inherited their talent for spin. She could charm her way into jobs, out of tickets, through relationships. I inherited the opposite, fear of chaos, love of order. They called me boring. They weren't wrong. I never skipped rent, never missed a deadline. They mocked it, but they relied on it. 2 years ago, when my dad needed $1,800 for an investment that couldn't wait, it was me he called. When my mom's dental bill came due and she forgot to sign up for insurance, I was the one transferring $600 at midnight. Always with the promise, we'll pay you back. Always without the result. The breaking point should have come earlier, but it didn't. It came 4 months before this trip. My nephew, my sister's boy, was struggling in school. They found a private academy that cost more than my mortgage. The deposit was $5,000. They called me crying. Said it was urgent, that his future depended on me. I told them no. It wasn't cruel, it was survival. I have 3 kids, a mortgage, braces to pay for next year. I can't, I said softly, like I was handling glass. We don't do private school. I'm sorry. The silence on the line froze me harder than yelling would have. Then my mother's voice, flat, of course. I forgot. You have rules. For weeks, we didn't speak. Until the reunion was planned. Suddenly, everything was bright again. They were thrilled to see us. It'll be so good, they said, to all be together. They'd figured the money out, somehow. They were fine now. I didn't ask how. And when my father handed me that navy suitcase in their driveway, grinning, saying, "Won't fit in our trunk," I didn't unzip it. Didn't wonder why the people who couldn't afford groceries now looked so light. I should have. Because what's at stake now isn't just money or pride. It's freedom. My children's future. And once I truly let that sink in, the decision made itself. I couldn't make myself touch it. That navy suitcase might as well have been radioactive. My husband crouched, unzipping it only far enough to peel back the layers. The sound of the zipper rasped against the silence, teeth grinding open. On top, sweatshirts. My dad's size, faded logos from beer brands he never drank. Beneath, 2 wrapped boxes that looked like board games. He lifted one. It was light, too light. Underneath, the backpack. Bright blue with rocket ships, one of those cheap nylon things you get free from a school fair. He pressed it toward me. Look. I didn't want to, but my body bent anyway, like gravity had shifted. The nylon crinkled under my hand. Inside, plastic packets, vacuum sealed, stacked like bricks. Pale powder visible through the edges. No labels. No disguises. Just there, blunt and obvious. For 1 second, my brain refused translation. Then it snapped into place. Not sugar. Not flour. Not anything innocent. Words pushed through my throat, this is, but I couldn't finish. He closed the zipper and dropped the backpack back into place. The sound was dull, final. On the ground near my feet lay a folded slip of paper that must have fallen when he moved things. I bent down. It was a receipt. Cash transfer. Dated 2 days ago. Amount, $4,200. Recipient, initials I didn't recognize. My father's handwriting in the corner, balance due. The blood drained from my face so fast I thought I'd collapse. I held the paper in my hand, the ink smudging where my sweat bled into it. Proof. Not suspicion. Proof. My husband stood, his shadow cutting across me in the heat. They set us up, I said, voice so thin I barely heard it myself. He nodded once. They did. My phone buzzed again. Another call from my mother. Then a text. Where are you? Did you leave? Call me. The screen glowed like an accusation. I stared at the suitcase. The smell of hot asphalt filled my nose, tar and gasoline. My skin prickled with sweat. And inside me, something clicked. A soundless snap. The line between tolerating and acting had broken. I made a choice. Back home, after the kids were finally asleep, one curled sideways across the bunk bed, one sprawled on the rug with headphones still on, one breathing deep against a pillow that smelled like crayons, I sat at the kitchen table with the receipt. The clock over the sink ticked past 11:07 p.m. The air was heavy with dish soap and the faint burnt smell from dinner. My hand shook as I smoothed the paper flat on the laminate. $4,200. Dated, June 14th. Initials, C.R. Scrawled note, balance due. I snapped a photo with my phone, then another of the suitcase itself, zipped tight and shoved into the garage. Evidence. My husband's idea, not mine. He was already thinking like someone preparing for a courtroom. But I needed to know for certain. Because some part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like. That maybe my parents were stupid, reckless, manipulative, but not criminals willing to throw me and my kids under a bus. So I made a call. Not to them. Not to my sister. To someone who owed me honesty, an accountant I'd worked with when my parents had nearly lost their house years ago. A quiet man, blunt, who didn't sugarcoat. I texted first, need advice. Urgent. Can I send a photo? He replied in 2 minutes, send it. I forwarded the transfer slip. Seconds later, my phone rang. Eva, he said, no greeting, voice low. That's not a loan slip. It's tied to a money service. I've seen these in audits. That's a payout for product. Street product. If the rest is balance due, your parents are in deep. And if you were caught transporting, he stopped. You'd be in deeper. The words scraped through me. With my kids in the car. Exactly. A pause. You need to protect yourself. Distance. Documentation. Do not let that bag cross state lines. I stared at the dark window, my reflection staring back, pale and hollow. How long would a case like that hold? I asked, almost whispering. He sighed. Intent to distribute, crossing state borders, minors involved? Years. maybe a decade. Don't gamble with this, Eva. Cut the tie before it strangles you. The call ended, leaving silence thick in the kitchen. On the table, the paper looked smaller than before. But heavier too. And I understood. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival. The stakes had never been clearer. The next morning, the suitcase was still in the garage, tucked behind a stroller we hadn't used in years. Just seeing it made my chest tighten. Sunlight filtered through the slats of the garage door, catching on the scuffed navy fabric like a spotlight on guilt. My husband had already left for work. The kids were eating cereal at the table, spoons clinking against bowls, milk dripping onto the placemats they always forgot to wipe. Normal sounds. Ordinary morning. Except nothing was ordinary anymore. I dried my hands on a dish towel, picked up the phone, and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time, a lawyer I'd once met through a work contract dispute. She answered on the third ring. Eva? Been a while. My voice was steady, almost too steady. I need to know how to protect my family if my parents tried to set me up. There was a pause. Set you up how? I swallowed. Drugs. Hidden in my car. With my kids inside. Her intake of breath was sharp. Do you still have them? Yes. In my garage. Don't move them. Don't throw them away. Document everything. Photos, timestamps. I'll draft a letter this afternoon, something formal, stating you've discovered contraband and returned it directly to their property. Delivered by courier, with proof. That way if anything surfaces, you're on record as refusing involvement. The towel in my hands was damp, twisted into a knot. And if they try again? Then we escalate, restraining order, police report. But first, create a clear paper trail. You're not a mule, Eva. You're a witness. By noon, I was standing in line at a courier office downtown, suitcase at my feet like a bomb no one else noticed. The clerk weighed it, 52 pounds, and raised an eyebrow. Just fragile items, I muttered. My palms left sweat marks on the carbon copy forms. The lawyer's instructions were simple: ship directly to my parents' address, signature required. Attached, a notarized letter I'd slid into the side pocket: property belonging to you, returned intact. Not mine, not wanted. Do not send anything further. The courier stamped it. My copy bore the ink, June 15, 2:42 p.m. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the summer air hit me like heat from an oven. I felt emptied, hollow, but lighter too. At 4:18, my phone buzzed. A message from my dad: why would you send that back? Are you insane? Call us. I didn't reply. For the first time, the silence was mine. And on the other side, I knew, the shock was settling in. They hadn't expected me to act. By the next morning, the calls started. First my mother, voicemail after voicemail, syrup thick, pretending confusion. We don't understand. Why would you think the bag was anything but gifts? You're overreacting. Then my father. Short, sharp. You don't return family property through a courier. That's insulting. Call us back now. I didn't. Instead, I forwarded every voicemail to my lawyer's secure folder. She replied within an hour: keep them. They show tone. They show pressure. But the pressure wasn't just digital. 3 days later, at 3:11 p.m., I arrived at school for pickup. My youngest was waiting. My oldest too. But my 9-year-old, wasn't there. My chest clamped so hard I thought my knees might buckle. The teacher smiled like nothing was wrong. Oh, he already went home. Your parents said you asked them to take him. The hallway spun. My phone buzzed in my hand with a text I hadn't seen: we've got him. Don't worry. He's safe with us. Safe. The word made bile rise in my throat. I drove faster than I should have, engine growling, hands slick on the steering wheel. At their house, I found balloons tied to the porch rail, a plastic bag of toys spilling across the front steps. Inside, cake on the counter, soda cans open, my son building a Lego tower while my parents smiled like a commercial for happiness. Surprise, my mom sang. I didn't step forward. I didn't hug. I said only, "Get your things. We're leaving." My son looked up, face flushed with sugar and attention. But Grandma said, "Now." My voice was steel. He gathered the toys, confused but obedient. My mother's smile faltered. My father crossed his arms. "Eva, don't be dramatic. He's our grandson. We're allowed to treat him." I met his eyes. "You're not allowed to steal him from school. Ever." Silence. The cake knife on the counter glinted under the kitchen light. My heart pounded so loud it filled my ears. I herded my son out, buckled him in the car, drove away without a word. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and told my husband, "We can't stay here. Not in this city. Not near them." He nodded slowly. "I'll ask about the transfer tomorrow. The Florida office still has openings." For the first time, the plan wasn't theirs. It was ours. And it was the only way forward. A week after the school incident, I thought maybe things had gone quiet. Calls slowed. Messages stopped. For 2 days, no knocks at the door, no sudden appearances in the driveway. Then the envelope came. It was slid under our front door sometime between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m. A manila envelope, thin, creased at the corners. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded twice. A printed chat transcript. I didn't know how they got it, maybe my sister, maybe one of their friends, but the lines were clear. 2 numbers, back and forth. My father's phone listed at the top. Balance cleared once delivery crosses state line. Courier confirmed. Family car, low suspicion. I read it 3 times, my pulse slamming harder each time. The date, 2 days before our trip. No room for doubt. They hadn't stumbled into desperation. They had planned it. They had named me the courier. They had counted on me not asking questions, on me being too dutiful to resist. My husband found me at the kitchen counter, paper trembling in my hands. He read it once, then exhaled slow through his nose. "That's it." That night, I forwarded the transcript to our lawyer. Her reply came back almost immediately, "Eva, this seals it. You're not paranoid. You're a target. Keep copies. Relocation makes sense now." But my parents weren't done. 2 days later, as we loaded boxes into the garage for the move, my mother appeared in the driveway. No call, no knock, just standing there in the humid air, her cardigan clinging to her arms. "You're making a mistake," she said softly. "We never meant for you to get hurt." I wiped sweat from my forehead, cardboard pressing into my palms. "You meant for me to get caught." Her lips tightened. "You've always been so ungrateful. We did what we had to do. You think you're better than us?" I set the box down, looked her straight in the eye. "No. I think I'm done with you." She flinched, not much, just enough for me to see it. Then she turned and walked back to her car without another word. I stood in the garage, the cicadas screaming outside, the paper in my pocket burning like a brand. And I knew there was no way back. Not ever. 3 months later, we were gone. Florida was flat and humid, but it felt like freedom. My husband's transfer went through without friction. We found a rental outside Jacksonville, 1,600 square feet, pale yellow siding, citrus trees out front. The kids rode new bikes down cul-de-sacs that smelled faintly of cut grass and grill smoke. No knocks at the door. No surprise visits at school. No phone calls lighting up the screen with dread. I kept the evidence in a fireproof box in the closet, the photo of the receipt, the courier slip, the chat transcript. Not because I needed it daily, but because I knew that if the past tried to find me again, I would not be caught unprepared. Sometimes the cousins sent texts, half curious, half accusatory. Your mom says she doesn't know where you are. Family doesn't just vanish. I stopped replying. I no longer explained myself to people who only wanted me useful. The children adjusted faster than I did. They loved the new school, the pool at the community center, the fact that their grandparents here actually showed up with casseroles and open hands instead of schemes. My youngest told me one night, drowsy with chlorine and macaroni, Grandpa plays checkers with me and doesn't ask for anything. Isn't that funny? It was more than funny. It was healing. In the quiet evenings, when cicadas gave way to frogs and the house smelled of laundry and candle wax, I sometimes thought about the suitcase. About the weight of it in the trunk, about the line we almost crossed without knowing. My parents were still out there, spinning their stories, maybe even facing consequences one day. But that wasn't mine to carry anymore. Now, my boundaries are simple. They don't call me. They don't see the kids. They don't know our address. And I don't bend, not for guilt, not for nostalgia, not for their desperate kind of love that always had strings tied tight. Today, I water the small lemon tree we planted in the backyard. The air is thick with salt from the coast, my hands smell of earth. The kids laugh inside, music spilling through the open windows. I don't flinch when the phone buzzes. I don't brace for the worst. This is my life now. Steady. Chosen. Free. And I keep walking forward.